Okay, so first of all, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedules to view this webinar. We've had a lot of very good feedback on it. This is actually an updated format with a little bit of, if you want to say, newer technology and a little bit newer information. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jason Spangler. I'm the Flooring Division Manager here at Wagner. I'm responsible for both the Rapid RH product line and the small line of hand meters that we have for testing wood, finished floor, and wood substrate. We are going to be doing a Q&A session here. I'll get through as many questions as I can, but please don't hesitate to type in your question and send it via email, and I'll get to as many of them as possible. If for some reason I don't get to answer your question, I will either, depending on how much information you give me, I'll either contact you directly or I'll respond to that email directly so that you can have my contact information. If for some reason you think of a question after the fact, or if you have an issue or some problems that arise later on down the road, please don't hesitate to call me directly. Again, my name is Jason Spangler. My phone number is 800-634-9961, and my direct extension is 235. So one of the questions that I get quite often is, how do we determine what the thickness of the concrete is? Obviously, as Howard talked about, the depth that you drill and measure the relative humidity in the concrete is critical. And one of the ways that you need to really look to try to determine what the thickness is. So if you're looking at new construction, obviously you have construction documents. You have people who are on site. Yes, there'll be some inconsistencies in the thickness of the slab, but most people would say that you're doing your due diligence by looking at the construction documents that are provided to you by the on-site personnel. If you're looking at rehab, which is where it really gets to be kind of the question mark sometimes, is I tell people to look, a lot of times for renovations, you have trenching that's done. So you're going to have an open trench where they're moving plumbing. If worst case scenario, there's none of that stuff going on, I will tell people that what I see a lot or hear a lot about out in the field is that people will actually drill smaller diameter holes into the concrete all the way through. And then typically what they'll do is, once they have that all the way through, they'll have a piece of pliable metal that they'll make a J-hook out of. And as that J-hook being a little bit wider than what the diameter of the hole is, they'll push it all the way down to the bottom of the hole until it comes through the bottom, and you can feel it because it'll spring a little bit. Pull it up until there's resistance, mark it off with a Sharpie, pull it all the way out. You can look at where the Sharpie line is and where the radius of the J-hook is and get a pretty good idea. I definitely don't hear of people who are turning the slab into Swiss cheese, and I don't think I would recommend that, but a couple of holes opposite ends of a building or opposite ends of the slab definitely gives you at least some semblance of what the true thickness of the slab is. Another thing that I hear quite often is when I'm looking at elevated pan decks, am I drilling 20% or 40%? So in other words, is the slab theoretically drying from one side or drying from two sides? I will say that it is drying from, if it is in a metal pan deck, it's only drying from one side, even though the metal pan decking can be called vented pan decking. Definitely not enough venting or airflow on it to assume that it's drying from both sides. So you're going to drill into the slab 40%. The next question then becomes, well, do I calculate 40% of the shallow portion of the metal pan deck or the concrete, or do I look at it on the deepest section? So there's a couple different ways that it's done out in the field. One, you can identify where the thickest portion of that slab is, and you can do that quite easily with a fairly inexpensive metal detector. You can buy them at Lowe's, Home Depot. The one that I found was actually a Bosch. and it works a lot like a stud finder in a wall, but you put it on the surface of the concrete, and it will actually, it has a strong enough signal that it will pick up the high points of where that metal is, but not so strong that it picks up all the way down in the deepest section. So what you can do is you can put it on the surface, scan across, hit a high spot and mark it, scan across again, hit a high spot and mark it, and then drill 40% of the middle, in between those two marks, 40% of what that deepest section is. Nice thing about that is it really does cover, from an installation standpoint, it does cover some of the assumptions of the where exactly you should be drilling. Another way that they're looking at and that people are actually doing out in the field, some people, is they're coming up with an effective thickness calculation where they're taking a portion of the thin section, a portion of the thick section, they're putting them together, they're coming up with, in essence, an average, and then drilling anywhere on the floor. Some people really like that. Others are really looking at it and they want to see more evidence that really does fall in line with what we're trying to prove here, which is what the thickness or what the drill depth should be to be able to predict what the surface conditions will be when you put a floor on top of it. So looks like I don't have any other questions. So again, my name is Jason Spangler. My direct phone number is 800-634-9961, and it's extension 235. And I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day and wish you all a Merry Christmas.